order tonight. Rodon, if you do the roll call, please.
Gookin,
Present.
McEvers,
Here.
Wood, Evans,
Here.
English,
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Let's rise for the invocation. We have Pastor Paul Vanoy with candlelight with us. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Shall we bow our hearts? Father, thank you so much for the blessing of living in this wonderful community. I thank you for our mayor. I thank you for our council members. I thank you for everyone that serves this community. And Lord, we are very thankful that we've had a terrific 4th of July event this year without major incident. We're very thankful for your blessing upon our community, and we do ask that as things move forward, we will continue to see blessing. We pray for all those that live in this beautiful city, all those that serve, all those that work in this city. We pray for our law enforcement and our fire and rescue. Lord, we are just thankful that you care about us. And Lord, we look to you for leadership. We look to you today for our mayor and council members as they make decisions for all of us. And we give you praise today in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Dan, if you'd lead us in the pledge, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any amendments to the agenda tonight, so we'll move on to presentations. Our first presentation is from Glenn Miles, who is the Executive Director of the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you. It's like somebody got rid of them. No, they're gone. Oh, there they teed them up.
Super duper small, sorry.
That's okay. And something's been going through them. There we go. Good evening. Thanks, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, for an opportunity to speak to you tonight. I want to talk about our transportation future and some of our opportunities and challenges that we face over the next 20 years. To kind of give a recap of where we've been since 1970, Kootenai County's overall growth has gone up about 340%, about 138% above Idaho's and 60% above the U.S. average. So you can see that it's been a fairly large and steep climb since that time. It's not all been straight, though. We've had a lot of fluctuation in growth rates on an annual basis, going as high as just over 8%, and then actually in the 80s we had negative growth for a short period of time. So we've been in a lull. We had a short above average in 2005, then it dipped with the recession that occurred. We're coming out of that, and so what we're seeing is another one of those spikes that we've seen historically. So it's not unprecedented, it's just there's a lot more people in that percentage right now. We use the population forecast for the area. In order to develop them for transportation, we track population, we track employment levels, we track where the growth is occurring and what types of growth and what types of employment are in the area in order to develop growth rates through 2040. What we do is we create a general number for the entire county, and then we disaggregate that to the jurisdictions based on their individual growth patterns that have been going on for quite some time. And what we found out was, by and large, throughout the county, it's about a 2.4% growth rate countywide. But each jurisdiction, some have had very low growth rates, like Harrison, but some have been rather rapid. The urban area overall is about a 3.2% growth rate. So a couple of years ago, when we did the latest forecast, we said around 2018 to 2020, there would be about 166,667 people, and people thought we were going to be nuts. The Bureau of Economic Analysis did a report in November of 2020, estimated our population at 65,690, and that was in 2018. So we're far going to surpass 166,000, I believe, when we see the 2020 census come out in September is when the latest announcement is. So with that, I suspect that we're on our way and that these are probably realistic forecasts. So by 2040, we should have about 304,000 people in Kootenai County. I saw a presentation in Boise here not too long ago, and they said if you take the population of Kootenai County, Canyon County, and Ada County combined, we represent 50% of the population of the state of Idaho. So there's a lot of things changing in the state, and I think we're going to see some changes in the way transportation funding distribution occurs and things like that. So I think it's going to force kind of a conversation that hasn't been taking place in probably 20 to 30 years. Using that data, this is where our travel demand is today. If you see yellow, that's not too bad. If you see red, then we have a problem. And I call it my artery chart, because if you see purple, that means you've lost your oxygen and you're not going anywhere. As you can see, we're not in that bad of shape right now. Interstate 90, especially in the evening peak hour when you're heading towards Post Falls, slows down, you see a lot of traffic, and if there's any type of incident that occurs during that time, it stops. And then everybody tries to get restarted. And that can usually take 35 minutes, 45, 50 minutes in order, once that stops, to kind of get things going again. That brings about some changes that we'll talk about, which is we're running on a legacy transportation system. The last investments, believe it or not, in our area, major investments occurred about the time that Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. And we've been running on that asset since then. Late 60s, early 70s is when the last major investments occurred. It served us well, but right now we have system performance challenges, as people see right now. We have system resiliency, its ability to come back after a slowdown or an accident. And that reliability is particularly important, because that's when people who are looking in terms of siting businesses here, they understand congestion, but they want reliability. They want the ability to get their goods and people to and from work, and their goods in and out of the area. So those are all key factors. This is 2040. If we just do a no build, everything that's programmed right now gets done, but there's no additional funding, we're going to be in a world of hurt. You see I-90 basically a gridlock in both directions between US 95 and Highway 41. You see stop and go traffic constantly on both US 95 and Government Way. And then you see some east-west challenges further north as well. And one that I think is particularly concerning as well is the US 95 bridge over the Spokane River, which is a key artery for commerce going north-south in Idaho. So what I call our Big Five regional projects is I-90 to 6 lanes from State Line to Sherman. That's like the number one thing that needs to be worked on. The Hutter Corridor from I-90 to US 95 north. The I-90 port of entry at Hutter Rest Area needs to move out towards the Pleasant View-McGuire area, so it's in a location that actually works for commerce trucks trying to get through the area. Creation of a regional traffic management center that helps address that resiliency and reliability challenge that we have facing us, and then widening the US 95 Spokane River Bridge and its approaches, basically creating the 4-lane section around the corner and tying it all in. So what's happening in 2021? US 95 north from I-90 to the State Highway 53 is going to have some additional intersection improvements. We went through a series of things that occurred in the last couple of years. The storage lanes on the left turns at some of those locations a bit too short. They became more attractive than what a lot of people thought they would. So they're going to be extending the storage lanes on those left turns all the way up through the Wyoming Light, up past Miles. Bridge deck repairs on I-90 are going to be occurring. They'll be what they call a hydro demo and redo. And then the US 95 bridge, you saw that they redid the top course on it. They're going to be doing the rails next. And they should be starting on those very shortly. The July-August timeframe will be the resurfacing and the bridge rail repairs. The environmental documents for I-90 widening and for the Hutter Corridor have been funded by the Idaho Transportation Board, and they will begin in probably the next couple of months, and those are expected to take 18 to 24, maybe 36 months to complete. That's the next stage in order to put them in a queue for actual funding for any right-of-way acquisition and then for construction. So what's happening in 22-23? ITD's been funded on 95 from I-90 to 53 for all new signals and a signal timing update. The last time those were put in, a lot of the side streets had what they called pucks put in inside the pavement. They were supposed to last longer than they did, and so the ability to detect the traffic on the side streets is basically failing, and so those have been funded, and those will be put in 2022. The 41 corridor widening and access control is going to be completed next year. It'll become an access controlled 4-lane divided highway, much like what US 95 looks like. They'll have signals installed at no less than quarter-mile spacings, a lesson they learned from 95. And then there'll be a new bicycle and pedestrian trail on the east side of Highway 41. 23 to 26, you can expect I-90 widening to 6 lanes from State Line to Sherman. The first segment is currently planned to be from Post Falls to US 95. There will be a new 95 interchange as a part of the I-90 reconstruction there. So that will be a major effort. Highway 41 will also see a new interchange at I-90. And the upcoming 22-28 program, which kind of has all these packaged in them, is about $332 million that are programmed. And by program, that means that money's been guaranteed to those projects. So if you put the projects that are planned to be built, there are still some issues, and I'm not going to paint a pretty picture that we are behind the curve by about 20 years, and it's going to take more than 20 years to get us out of the curve. But we are still going to have congestion, but things are going to be better. If we do start on these projects now, then we try and wait. And those projects I've already identified for you. The one in particular, so in 2040, the demand is just kind of zooming in towards Coeur d'Alene. The one on the left is the 2040 no build, 2040 with the full plan build. You can see the amount of congestion on US 95 and on Government Way really slows down. That's because people, instead of having to go up 95 and then taking a left at Kathleen or taking a left at Hanley or taking a left, they're able to go out and go up the Hutter Corridor and then use that to filter out across the prairie to all the development that's going on out there. One thing interesting that we'll probably have a discussion on is that US 95 from Appleway to probably Bosanko, not Bosanko, but Bakel, will be designated a US 95 business route as opposed to being signed as US 95, which may result in a discussion about turning back or sharing the use of that road between the local jurisdictions and ITD. Some people, have said, well, that's a big facility for a local jurisdiction to take on. And I would encourage you to look at opportunities where you can deal with land use development in that corridor under an urban environment rather than what has been a traditional suburban environment. So there's a lot of capacity there that additional growth and development could take advantage of in terms of business, commercial, and retail. So that's just something that I think the council should be aware of, that discussion may show up in the not too distant future about US 95 being turned back to Hayden and the city of Coeur d'Alene. So what caused this when we didn't have it last year? In the 22 package, which the legislature adopted this year, it's based on House Bill 362. They increased the sales, they didn't increase the sales tax, but they increased the sales tax funding for transportation from 1.5% to 4.5%. So it went from ITD getting $20 million a year in sales tax revenue out of the general fund. They've gone now to about, estimated for FY22, to $84 million a year. The bill specifically states that $80 million per year will be guaranteed to ITD for transportation projects, so for state highway transportation projects, and that anything over $80 million a year will be available to local jurisdictions. Well, the FY22 estimate is $84 million, so that means $4 million would be spread across all the local jurisdictions and highway districts in the state, which doesn't mean much for local jurisdictions, But it does provide, because it is a guaranteed revenue stream for ITD, it does provide the ability to bond up to about $1.4 billion, and that's what they're going to start doing a lot of these projects with. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Council questions? Whitting?
Just a few, some clarification. Can you tell us what ITD is responsible for compared to what cities are responsible?
Right.
There's some confusion. I think people think I-95 is the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Currently, US 95 is the ITDs, but for some jurisdictions over a certain threshold, local jurisdictions are expected to help participate in maintenance and preservation of the system, not the pavement, but like the signals and things like that. So oftentimes, and like the bicycle path on the east side of 95. So the ITD has, over the years, seek to get assistance from the local jurisdictions for the operations of the signals, essentially.
How about Highway 41?
Same thing.
That's state.
That's a state highway. So if it says SH and it's a number, it's a state highway, and I being the interstate, it's a federal. Anything US is also, anything interstate or US or SH, those are all owned by ITD.
Okay, Hutter.
It's not
Magic
owned by
Hutter.
anybody right now. Right now, Hutter, as a road, is owned by predominantly the Post Falls Highway District.
Okay.
The Hutter corridor would be owned by the state of Idaho, by ITD.
Okay. So let me ask you, back in your days, when they built 95, they didn't do frontage roads. And I heard the history of that is that was on purpose.
Well, I think
Do you
that was
know?
on purpose, that people didn't want them.
Okay,
They wanted more direct access. So what they've done with State Highway 41 is they worked with the local jurisdictions in the county to look towards the backage roads so that people who front 41, if they're not on the quarter or half mile spacings, they may get a right in, right out, but otherwise, which is what you see now
Right.
on some of the streets on 95. But they'll have to take access from a road behind the property and then go to a local street to go back to an intersection.
okay, so no frontage roads in the history, in the future?
No, they'll be what they call backage roads.
Backage.
They're behind the property, so there's nothing between the property and the state highway system.
Gotcha. 95 in the future, 95 bridge crossing the river, we're doing some work on it, but it's not getting wider, is that correct?
It is not getting wider.
Okay. And there's probably a good reason, right? ITD.
It's just
Okay.
money.
So you go back quite a few years. I remember you talking about Hutter long ago.
Yep.
Back in the 90s, I think. Were you there in the 90s?
No, I
Almost.
came on board in 2003.
Okay, so I've
It
heard you
seems
for
like the
those
90s.
long. That always seemed like a good idea, and the reason it hasn't is the money. Is that correct?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that, if I might. When it was adopted in April of 2009 for the right, it was adopted as a right-of-way preservation program.
Okay.
So there was no expectation it was going to be built right then, even though we knew that was going to be needed in the future. Well, that future is now upon us, and I think most everyone understands there's a need for getting a better limited access north-south route without signals through our area.
Okay. One other question, it said something about the creation of a regional traffic management center.
Right.
Is that a bureaucratic techie guys that
The
make the
techies
lights
love
go?
it.
Techies love it?
Yeah. So what it is, it's a place where the ability to do traffic management, for example, you had an event for over the 4th of July down here.
Right.
So it's the ability to put in a signal plan that crosses jurisdictional boundaries, that allows that when the event's over, those signals get timed to get people out in a timely fashion. And then if there's an incident on 95 or on I-90 or something like that, you can send an incident management team, you can re-signal timing, you can put messages out on the variable message signs, and someone's there watching what's going on in terms of traffic accidents or incidents, and to be able to respond to them more closely. I didn't include the slide, but 2 years ago, we had an accident on Cougar Gulch Hill where there was a trailer came off a tractor and someone went under the trailer, and they closed it for about 2.5 hours. The detour at that point in time is if you went into Washington, it was 60 miles, because you went over to Freeman and down into Spokane Valley and back in, or you went to St. Mary's, to Rose Lake, to I-90, and then back in. That's not resiliency, and that's not reliability. So the Traffic Management Center identifies those things quickly so that they can be addressed more efficiently.
So it's real time.
It's real-time management of the system.
So when they redid the intersections recently, made them left turns only to crossing a 95, I know that I drive that every day. So I was just thinking about those were some big improvements that seemed to help a lot. The flow of traffic, I know our city, they try and keep things moving, not like you don't race up to the red light and stop and then go again and stop. The state, it feels like sometimes it's not set up that way. Do you guys at KMPO have influence on things, the little details down in the dirt, so to speak?
We work with ITD and the local jurisdictions to program funds for them to be able to update that. And as I said in my presentation, they just got about $2.2 million to replace all the lights and all the traffic detection for that entire corridor that they'll be doing next year.
Thanks so much.
Other questions for Glenn? Kiki?
Not a question, just a comment. I just wanted to publicly thank you and your team at KMPO for not being the ones who are leading the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, but housing all the information for the public to view on your website voluntarily, and we all appreciate it very much, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, thank you, Glenn, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up for our presentation is we have Wally Jacobson, the Executive Director of PAC, with us tonight.
It's so tiny down here at the bottom. Why are we whispering? Use the keyboard.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Wally Jacobson. I'm the Executive Director of the Panhandle Area Council, and I appreciate the chance to give an update. I don't think I've never been here. I think you guys might have seen me or one of my previous executive directors, Jim Deffenbaugh, way back when. But Troy sits on our board, so I thought I'd give you guys an update of what we've been up to. Let's see, I'll use this here to control. Basically, we're a regional economic development group formed in the 70s. Our membership consists of the cities and counties of the 5 northern counties of Idaho. We currently have all 5 counties are members. Over the years, they've gone in and out, but they're all back on board right now. We're a 501c4 nonprofit corporation, and we're an economic development district designated by EDA, and that's somewhat important for getting grants. This kind of gives you a little org chart of what we do. Primarily, we've got 3 areas that we focus on: business development, which boils down to business loans. We run an incubator startup center out at the airport, have been out there since the 80s. We have an economic development planning group, and we put together the comprehensive economic development strategy for the 5 northern counties. And then we have a community development group that does grant writing and financing and, to a lesser degree these days, urban renewals. And so I'll just go across that, just to give you an update. On our business development group, business loan program, we basically have a number of programs. Our programs are designed primarily for gap financing. We try not to compete with the banks and credit unions. Our programs are designed basically for job creation, job retention, and economic development. Most of our clients are gap, meaning they can't get a loan typically from one of those other institutions, so they come our way, and we'll either finance them or we'll work with a bank or a credit union to provide financing. Basically, like I say, we're converting nearly bankable to bankable. I have one item there highlighted. PAC was recently awarded about a year ago a $3 million grant to basically develop another revolving loan fund and to get that fund out within 2 years. We've got a little less than half of that out in the 5 northern counties, and we're wanting to get it all out by next July. Because if we get it out, it stays with PAC and our community, be revolved. And if we don't get it out, it goes back to DC, so we're working on getting it out. I'll drop over here. Here's some some of the programs that we work on. One of them is the SBA 504 program. It's primarily for commercial buildings and development. This is one of the ones we've got going on right now, a $5 million distribution center. It's here in Kootenai County. On our revolving loan funds, we do startup loans, which is a little different than you might see with a bank or a credit union. We'll take a risk when others may not. These guys here, Coeur and Wood, are out in Post Falls, had a good idea. Let's take new cedar and make it look like old cedar so everybody puts it on their house. So they developed a couple of industrial sun tanning beds. The fellow on the right is a contractor, and the fellow on the left is his partner, who is an attorney. So basically, those guys took off, gangbusters, no one would finance them, so we took a risk. Their collateral was primarily, I don't know, they probably had 6 or 8 screw guns and some skill saws was their collateral. But we took a risk, and they're now currently in Lowe's and Home Depot and doing pretty well. We do expansion loans. I mean, folks are probably familiar with Evans Brothers Coffee. That was a client of ours that we helped them expand down here into Coeur d'Alene. We also do loans with nonprofits, which is kind of difficult. Most nonprofits find it difficult to get a loan. It's basically based on cash flow. Can they cash flow and service the debt? With CASA here, we partnered with a bank. And that's usually code. When I say we partner with the bank, I'll be somewhat facetious, but that means PAC takes a second position and the bank's in the first lien position. So their risk pretty much goes away. But we do it because it's part of our charter to help with the gap financing. So we take risks where we think we can make a difference. We continue to operate I still call it the old school incubator, and others might call it an entrepreneur hub or a co-work center. Whatever name you want to use it, we still got it going out there near the airport. And this is a listing of some of the companies that are currently out there. We lease space, whether it's desk space, office space, or industrial space. One of those incubator tenants designs electronic. This is one of this is a light product that's currently in production. It's just finishing up testing. But this will go into the flight decks of most commercial airlines. They're all now currently ordering this or have pre-orders, and it's also military grade. So in the old days, they basically had the incandescent, what they call it, the torch. It burned the pilots, would burn their legs on the light aperture when it was closed. So this is all going to be LED with USB. So that manufacturer is currently sitting in the incubator. It's been there a couple of years. We'll eventually, hopefully, move on out. We also do economic development in terms of comprehensive economic development strategy. Many of you folks know Nancy Mabel. She heads up our admin grant development group. She's still there, and we're still doing the comprehensive strategy. Interesting enough, we partnered with some of the other districts in the state. There's 5 others, and we're also currently working on a SEDS program for the state at a state level. These are a few projects that the Economic Development Community Development Group's been working on. They do grant writing for the RAISE grant. We finished up a project for Post Falls. We're up in Priest River. We're doing some grant writing for some of this broadband money that was out there, supporting some of our members, cities and counties. We're doing up a Rev-Up grant, which is basically train the trainer for broadband, and now we're beginning a housing component of that particular grant. And then our group was also selected to receive a Resiliency Grant it was a grant we received about a year ago to help us plan for the next pandemic. So I guess we'll try to, or I should say emergency. But basically, what could we do in the future that we haven't done now? So that group, we're working with a consulting group out of Texas and Colorado, but they're not just working with us. We've combined our resources that grant money with the other districts in the state, because we figured we were all going to use about 80% of the same information. So it's one of the first times that various districts across the country have come together to do that. And then I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about a private investment program, and you folks might remember the Empire Airlines. They decided to build a new building out there in 2004 at the airport. So basically, it was a good idea. They didn't go to Spokane, but they didn't want to build and finance their own building. So PAC was volunteered to, I should say, we raised our hand and said we would do it. So we basically built that building for Empire, and they currently lease that from us. It's turned out to be a good deal. They're still got some folks employed out there. I think their last time I talked to them, they're still at about 350. But I think an important driver on that Empire building out there, part of that whole program was to bring infrastructure to the north side of the airport, sewer, water, power. And that's where we helped write some of those grants that got that out there back in 2004. I think we all anticipated that we'd have more companies moving out to the north side, and that would occur within the next couple of years after that was completed. Well, it has. It just took 16, 17 years later. And basically, Stancraft is out there with their new fixed base operator right next to the Empire building. They wouldn't be there unless that infrastructure was out there. When they got out there, we've got another company that's also building a large hangar out there, Dauntless Air, a maintenance facility. They basically provide firefighting aircraft across the country, but their maintenance facility is headquartered here. They were over in Washington and called us one day and said, you know of any lease space at the airport? I jumped in the car and found them 2 signs, took a picture, and within 2 weeks, they had leased space, and now they're currently looking at building another 15,000 square feet out there. Basically, it's going to be maintenance for all their fire bosses, they call them. That bottom picture down there, that was taken on Lake Ponderay last year off of my boat. There was a fire right next to us, and they came out and started scooping water and dropping. So they're basically designed for urban areas to try to get on the fire quickly. We've got several of them just stationed out here at the airport. Other things you folks might be familiar with in the past, and we do a little bit of it now, we do a Lend-Lease program, where basically we financed the Coeur d'Alene Police Station and leased it back to the city, and then you folks paid us off, I think, after 7 years. I kind of wish you would have gone a little longer, but it happens.
We're going to come knocking.
We did the same thing on the district building as our maintenance facility there. And then I just wanted to kind of finish up. We did some work with you folks on the eligibility report for the health corridor. And this is kind of the numbers that PAC has been doing over the last, since the 70s. We've done a number of grants and loans, and that's kind of what we do. We're always trying to figure out how we bring value to the 5 northern counties. I mean, as you can see, we were quite involved in Lend-Lease. That was pretty hot back about 10, 15 years ago, but cities and counties have figured out how to get things financed other ways, but we still do some of that as well. We were all over Urban Renewal District when it first came out. We kind of saw that develop. We were involved in, I think, 11 or 12 different Urban Renewal District developments. We've managed up to about 3 months ago, we were managing Dover and Bonners Ferry. Urban renewal districts, but then we decided that it's time for them to take over their own urban renewal district and manage that themselves. So we've kind of phased out of that area, but we're always looking for what's the next thing that we can produce, I guess, area that we can pursue to bring value. Because we're having to reinvent ourselves like everybody else. For example, our loan team, it's always very difficult to get good resources. I'm competing against banks and credit unions, and they pay pretty well, I guess in relation to PAC. But we've been more creative in terms of looking for resources that maybe dollar doesn't mean everything, that they might want to work from home and they might want to work remotely. So our chief lending officer is based in Boise. Our chief credit analyst is based in Twin Falls, and they both work out of their homes. And we basically are doing loans up here on our revolving loan funds, but on the SBA 504 program, we can go across the state And my board sometimes asks, why do we go across the state? And I say, we go across the state so I can build up that portfolio, get those service fees, and get them back up here to North Idaho. So I'm more than willing to go after a loan in Sun Valley, because we've done 4 of those. And we do that so that those service fees will come back up here and help support our organization. In the past, the grant department has typically carried the loan department, which is very opposite. Across the state, the other districts, the loan departments are usually providing more revenue than the grant departments. So we've made an effort here to try to bolster our loan department to help support the whole organization. And I just wanted to kind of finish up and to thank Coeur d'Alene, you folks, the members, council members, and mayor in the city for supporting PAC over the years. Hopefully you've seen that we've been around. We're always trying to figure out what's the next thing we can do to help the community from an economic development standpoint. And we do appreciate you having Troy on our board. He's always asking me about full-time equivalents, how many folks we've got employed. So he keeps me on my toes, he really does. So with that, I'll close my presentation.
Thank you, Wally. Questions? Woody?
So just a few questions. The GAP program, that's a loan, you're loaning money to business.
That
Not
aren't
this-
quite bankable, so we just call that gap financing. Maybe there's the gap between them able to get a loan from a bank and not get a loan. So what we do is we'll come in, we do a lot of technical support with a company, kind of explain how the financing works, what a bank will look at. You know,
Okay.
they're gonna look for your cash flow, being able to support that debt. And maybe if we can't help them get their performance, put together to present to a bank, maybe they're not bankable, perhaps we can use some of our funds to get that money, to get them a loan, to get them basically getting their business up and running or continuing to operate. And what usually happens is if we provide a loan, typically it gets paid back on the revolving loan fund side, maybe in a couple years, and it's usually the bank that we've partnered with. And that's the strategy. We're not really in the banking business, but once they get up and running, then the bank has a customer, and they continue on.
So do you ever have losses on that end? Places that don't make it, or do you do enough footwork ahead of time to go, we're going to get our payback?
Unfortunately, we do have losses because we take more risks. But and I'll say this, we've minimized most of those. We did take a fairly large one up here in the Silver Valley here last year because we provided a loan to a mill up there. But we take more risks than typically folks will do. And I'll just say this, on the revolving loan fund, which was surprising to me, is I mentioned that we received $3 million. Across the state, there was about $10 million. And for some reason, our 5 counties got a disproportionate share of that money. I mean, there's the district down in Twin Falls and Boise area that got the same amount, and they cover probably 3 to 4 times the population. And everybody was asking EDA's formula, and I think it basically boils down to the level of management of our revolving loan funds. I think we had, over the years, because we've had these funds in place since the 80s, I think EDA recognized that we can manage these RLFs pretty well. And I think that was part of their decision-making. They still haven't told anybody why they distributed it the way they did.
I think you deserve an attaboy on that one.
Well, I don't. It was the previous, groups that have been here. I mean, PAC's been around since the 70s. I've been here for 5 years, but that group, there's been a lot of lending over the years.
Let me ask you about incubators. I've seen a lot of comes and goes out there. It's always interesting to see. There was somebody burning animals at one time. Oh, cremating animals, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I thought that was that's an interesting world. I wonder how she did. Do they ever leave and move on?
Yeah, that one was kind of asked to leave, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a typical, before my time, but I heard the stories. I mean, it was for disposable animals. It was basically
Well, it was a needed service, but.
It was. The problem we were having, people would just drop the animals off in the driveway back there. So that was, again,
Right.
if I was to go back and say, would that be a business we'd want it back in the incubator? Probably not.
Right.
But we embrace breweries, cideries, wineries. We got all those. We've got a bakery, we got a machine shop, we've got a aviation manufacturer. But the plan usually was, and I was here at PAC in the 80s. You may not recognize me, I was a little younger then, but I did work almost 3 years at PAC back in 1986. And basically, we were in the Wiggett building down here, but we moved out to the airport. And back then, when we first developed that incubator, the thought was, okay, they'll get in, we'll counsel them, which we did, because we had the SBDC Center with Jim Deffenbaugh was there. And they basically had to present us their financials every month. You know, got to keep them on task. Well, that worked out pretty well, and the thought at that time was that they would be there for 2 years and they'd be gone.
Right.
No, that doesn't work that way. You need probably 6, 7 years, unless you catch a flyer, somebody can get out of there. But it's really unrealistic to think that they're going to be able to incubate and get out in 2 years. It's just tough.
Yeah.
And then there's those that were there for almost 14 years that, when I came on board, we kind of asked them it's time to move on. You've been here a while, so it's worked out, though. But
So
we
I
don't
noticed-
refer to it as incubator, it's our co-workspace now.
I always remember going out there and seeing what the new businesses was, and it, like you said, it stayed the same for a long time, and you always wonder, well, are they not making it, or are they making it, or, you know, all the things that we talk about in business, you're
Well,
helping them.
I think they were making it, but part of the reason what they were, again, I'll just be blunt. When I was there in the 80s, the rent was $400 a month, and it included your utilities. When I became the executive director in 2015, the rent was $400 a month, and it included your utilities. So we bumped up the rent a little bit and encouraged them to maybe time to move out a little bit. And there were several that were ready to do that. In fact, one that actually occupied 4 bays decided, yeah, you're right. And they went out and actually bought a building and moved into that building. No one had actually asked them to kind of leave, so they were ready to go.
We have, my personal experience has been with you guys have taught us a lot in our business and been there when we needed and helped us understand structure to be able to loan and helped us in the 4 restaurants we've been in over the years. And you guys were always somebody you could go talk to just to kind of get your brain wrapped around the economics. Is, you know, we're all sort of in our business for a business, and sometimes you don't always learn the money side and the borrowing side and all that.
Yeah, it's a unique aspect of a business, and we actually have a grant that provides us that we can provide that service. We call it our technical assistance, because it's different than financing a house.
Right.
I mean, they kind of look at, do you have a job? We kind of look at, okay, you got a business, okay, what kind of cash does it generate to pay the debt back? It's a different, it's kind of a little bit different, and we got to dig into the details of the business, basically.
No, it's been interesting, and I appreciate what you guys do, and you go way back too, and you keep changing. I like that.
We've got to.
Any other questions for Wally? Thank you very much, appreciate that. So we will move on to, we have some Association of Idaho City Awards, and Kiki attended the AIC convention, and so she has some awards that the city of Coeur d'Alene received and is going to share those with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it is my pleasure to be able to share these. The Association of Idaho Cities has an annual convention, and there's hundreds of cities across the state that are members of that organization, and each year at the annual convention, they do some awards to recognize some programs, projects, and achievements that each of these cities has made. So Coeur d'Alene, they gave out over 20 awards this year, and Coeur d'Alene, kind of in an unprecedented move, took home 2 of those awards, so that was quite an honor for us. So the first one, we've got a slideshow here that I think Troy's going to kind of go through as I describe it for you a little bit. But if we could have Chris Bosley and Todd Frisser, who's our city engineer and our streets director, come up at the end. Just come up and you can just let us pour these accolades on you for this great project. So what this is part of actually an ongoing program that is our stormwater outfall volume reduction program. And what that is for is to keep surface water from inside the city from going into the lakes and rivers, contaminating them. So it helps, this is an ongoing project that helps keep our river and lake healthy. So this is the first actual project within that whole program, and it was the swale at US 95 and Northwest Boulevard. So this is kind of, if you've been down there to see it, it was quite an engineering feat to try to take 210 acres of surface water, redirect it from drains that were going directly into the river into this swale, which catches all the water, puts it through these 3 tiers, and allows it to evaporate and drain out before it hits any of our open water. So this project got some great comments from other cities who were saying what a great program, how did you do that? And I also want to throw a little kudos out to Todd for being creative in having all of the rookies on equipment work in this place as they were putting this swale in. So obviously they got some great training on a new project that hadn't been done, and there wasn't anything else they could run into down there. So that was really heads-up thinking. So I want to congratulate Chris and Todd both on this award. We're grateful for your innovative and creative solutions, so thank you very much. And our second award was for a project all of council should join in on accepting, because it took all of council staff and our parks department. So Bill, you get to come up now. And this was, the project description anyway, is our Atlas Waterfront project. And I will tell you, the people at the convention were very impressed with how this program came together, how much community input came into it, and how much of what the community asked for was actually provided. And the council, our urban renewal district, and our citizens coming together to create this once-in-a-lifetime park for on the waterfront for everyone. Some of the things about the ADA accessible access being a main feature, the ADA accessible parking, swim ramps, the dog park along the river, all of the ways that this came together were unique. There were other parks folks I know who were really watching and keeping an eye on how this would come together. So we got our second plaque, and I'll give this to our Parks Director, Bill Greenwood, with our deepest appreciation. Thank you.
Sir, can I say something?
You certainly can.
Thank you. So, in this, submission, we talked about you guys, and we talked about the Ignite Board, and the vision that you all had to get this last bastion of waterfront for the public. Again, in the narrative we talked about, it's lockstep with our previous Parks Master Plan and the one you just adopted. And it hits, what they asked for were connectivity, trails, open space, and waterfront access. Those were the top vote getters. And this park does it all in one fell swoop. The other part of this that's really interesting is the collaboration about this park. That's a kind of an untold story. There were pieces of this that developed as Welsh Comer, Phil Boyd, and Tommy Livrier. We worked together on to change. For example, that one beach that you see was just a vast nothing. It was too much beach. And we came back to Ignite Board and said, gosh, I don't think the public's really going to like this. And they awarded us some more money to get this done, so there's a green belt. So the neat thing for me is that collaboration and being able to provide this to our community, but letting the community know that you guys really listened to them and got this that's in the master plan. And now we have this park that is going to be there forever. And we always call Tubbs our jewel. This is gold or something. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be really, really remarkable. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it. So we'll move on to public comments. Anyone in the audience that wishes to address council should have 3 minutes to do so on city business. Anyone in the audience wish to give public comment tonight? All right, we'll move on to announcements. Is there any member of the council that has an announcement tonight? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank one of our employees. His name is Steve Wolf. He was the shop manager, I guess. I don't know what his title was, up at the streets department. And I really admired him as an employee here because he went the extra mile always to find new ways to save money, to save the city money, the taxpayer money. The one budget item that we have, the used equipment item, I mean, that was his baby. And he used that, and he went out on the eBay for government, and he would find us used equipment and save us money. You know, some other agency would buy something and be dumb and they didn't need it. We would pick it up real cheap. And so he was just a hustler and a great guy to know. I would not visit the street department without going out, down and saying hi to Steve. And he's left the company, so he's gone to private practice, working with his son, I guess. But really, I'm going to miss him. I think he was a tremendous asset to the organization. So just wanted to give a shout out to Steve. If you're watching, thank you for all your contributions.
Thank you, Dan. That's
you're welcome.
nice. Anyone else have anything? I just had just a brief message. Many of you know Pastor Craig Sume with the First Presbyterian Church. And he came to Coeur d'Alene in December of 2011, so not quite 10 years, and just a tremendous guy. And Craig is one of those guys that no matter what your mood is going into the conversation with him, you're in a better mood afterwards. And just a tremendous guy. He is, unfortunately for our community, moving on to a church in Oakland, Florida. He spent time before he came to Coeur d'Alene in Florida, so he's going back to Florida. And there was an article in the paper that he gave a message to Coeur d'Alene, and I just like to read what his message was. And this is from Pastor Craig Sume. And Craig says, as a last thought, Sume shared that North Idaho is a lovely place to live, but he can't help but think that its inherent beauty is being threatened right now. He said the rhetoric he hears in the community is that people think that what is best for them is only best for them and those who think the same way, and they're willing to exclude others if they get in the way. Pastor Sume goes on to says, there's much greater joy at the end of the day in caring for each other than in caring only for yourself. There's greater blessing, the community is thriving, and great things can get done which benefit everyone and doesn't leave anyone out. And so I think that is just a tremendous message from Pastor Craig that, you know, we are going to have our differences. Differences are always going to occur. But I would hope that in the city of Coeur d'Alene that we would know that when we disagree, that there's a lot of things that we agree on and we can move our community forward. So I just wanted to thank Pastor Craig for just being such a great guy and a great member of our community, and just wanted to wish him and his family all the best in their transition to Florida. We're gonna miss him. So we will move on to the consent calendar. What do you got that?
I got it. I hate to follow that, but you're good. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 21039.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers?
Yes.
Kuchen?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll move on to other business. This is resolution number 21-040, approval of the award of a contract to Petra, Inc. for the new collections building project in the amount of $1,787,900. Mike Becker. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Well, let's start off with hello. We got an exciting project here. Wastewater would like to, try again. Hello. Wastewater would like to present our bid and award recommendations for the new sewer collections building. First, a little history. Pictured here is the existing sewer collections building. This is located at the treatment plant. It currently houses our crews quarters, the service collections divisions quarters, offices, and inside heated storage for their apparatus vehicles. Briefly, for the public's benefit, the sewer collections divisions is responsible for all the operations and maintenance of all the sewer collection systems. This includes the 230 miles of sewer pipe, 10 lift stations, and various other pressure pipes out there. Last fall, we presented this idea before council, and council gave their approval to relocate the present location of the collections building here at the treatment plant, which is in the Fort Grounds area, education corridor, to a more central location within the city at the compost site. This is on the north end of Julia, right next to the new water building. Listed here was some of the benefits that were presented at the time. Once completed, that existing building will be set up for a remodeled project for the new treatment operations at the treatment plant. But here you see an architect's rendering of what the new collections building will be. Nothing fancy, steel building, steel structure. It will have the same office spaces, crews quarters, oversized break room that can function as a conference room, and we are increasing the area by 1 storage bay. This here's a snapshot of the site. The collection building is orientated along the fence line here to the east. The building is set this way to accommodate a future expansion while still meeting the 35-foot horizontal separation requirement that Avista has for their high-voltage overhead power lines. This is just a real overview of the floor plan. Again, 5 bays, storage area, male and female locker rooms, and we're accommodating an enclosed lockable area for the IT server that's going to be placed in this building. So after securing a building permit, the city sent this out to bid on May 14th. June 15th, we received 3 bids. Here you can see a breakdown of all the bids. The apparent low bidder would be Petra, based out of Meridian, Idaho. They are obviously the responsive and low bidder. Add Alt 1 is for heated gutters on the face and the back of the buildings. This was not included in the original design. It was brought in after the fact. Wastewater knew that this project would carry over a fiscal year. We do have the budget authority for this project under account 7300. We also have budgeted accordingly for next fiscal year for the continuation of this project. Wastewater is recommending that we move and award the $8,900 for Add Alt 1 and combined with the lump sum bid. So this is the first time that the department has worked with Petra. Again, they're based out of Meridian. They are in good standing with the Idaho Secretary of State. At the time of the staff report, they did have a public works license. It expired on June 30th. We are in the process of verifying that that public works license is still valid. Apparently the building, what did we call that? Division of Building Safety is 5 weeks out and can't get me the information. We have made multiple phone calls down there, and they are doing their best to try to accommodate whether or not they have secured or renewed their public works license. Can't imagine a contractor this size letting something like that go, especially when they know that they have this in the books. So they have listed their subcontractors, all of which are local, and have done a great job for the wastewater utility as well as the city on other projects. So with that in mind, the department does find their bid proposal complete and in order. So in conclusion, pending whether or not they have a public works license, it is the wastewater department's recommendation that city council should accept this base bid, including add alt 1 and award the construction contract to Petra Incorporated for the new for the new collections building project in the amount of $1,787,900. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Woody?
Who was the architect on this?
The architect is Architects West.
And this is a basic building, no fancy, fluffy, cool block cinder walls, or no art on the side of it or anything like that? Yet?
Pretty plain. It's a steel building. It's, we actually have designed it to be more functional than the present building that they're in. So in this case, the crews actually can pass through a locker room, change clothes if need be, before they enter in a cleaner environment.
Nice. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
Just curious on the public works license, if there, I understand there was some reformatting of the Division of Building Safety, and it moved into another department at the state. And I know that I think Larry Jeffries was saying that everything, they basically didn't exist for a while, and so they were very backed up. So that very well could be the licensing issue. But what happens if you award a contract to a contractor that does have an expired license? Are you then going to have to delay the notice to proceed, or how are you going to manage that?
It's a very interesting question, and I'm glad that you asked that, because I did have that conversation with the city attorney, Randy Adams, earlier today. Problem is, in the instruction of the bidders, that all bidders, potential bidders, get a hold of, it says one of the criteria is you must have a public works license. If they do not have a public works license, they can be found non-responsive. Now, we're also going to ask building safety if there's a grace period that falls in there, because that can fall into that gray area. But if they are non-responsive, the next lowest bidder would be TML out of Hayden, Idaho. They missed the target by about $51,000. We have the option of either awarding it to the next lowest bidder, or we can throw out all the bids and rebid it and start over.
Okay, I guess I'm just curious of the timing, because if what we're doing today is approving awarding this contract to them, but it's a non-responsive bid, how does that undo itself? Mike, maybe you can weigh in on that.
Well, I think, like Mike said, I'm not sure when the project is going to start. So the bid before you is to award it to this person or this entity. Their license is subject to being renewed. It's a tough question. So
technically, we're awarding it to a company that doesn't have a license on the day we award it.
So,
well, one that they have a license that needs to be renewed, and what the legal status of that would be if it's not renewed because it's stuck in a mail slot in Boise or something. That's one thing. If it's something where it was gross negligence on their part, that might be a different deal. But you could go either way on it, and you can award it now. I think you're safe to do that. It would be up to the second to challenge the validity of that. Are they going to do that? I don't know.
I guess that was kind of my question, is that if we award it to a non-responsive bid, what's the next bidder's position on that?
may I ask a question of the attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Mike, what if, in this scenario, since we are talking about a permit and in all likelihood has been renewed and they have done their due diligence, that we proceed with awarding it, but we don't sign the notice of award because we still have 30 days remaining. And then we should be able to find out from building safety by then whether or not there is an existing or active permit renewal on their public works license.
Yeah, I think that would be a distinction. So council's being asked, do you approve this bid? And then the distinction being, yes, but we haven't signed the contract yet. And so you're not bound until you sign that contract. So if you have that time period to look at it and check with the state, do that. And then we can revisit that, or, like you said, throw them all out, start over again, or award to the second.
It doesn't seem to make sense to throw everything out, but could we either, table it for 30 days, or,
I guess I'm a little bit frustrated. Does Petra say that they have an application in for renewal?
I was going to call them today, but it would be,
I guess, to me, calling someone, if we just call do you have your license in for renewal? They say yes. Call up the division if they've had no past history with any incidences where they have been denied, and we call, I can't imagine calling this building safety, whatever the organization is, and not having them give us some information that, yeah, they've always been in good standing, they have an application in. I would hate to table it simply on something that we have not got, we haven't got the information on, right? It sounds like they're a reputable company. They've been doing business for a long, long time. It seems to me that I would stay on the line until somebody at this building safety can give you an answer.
Mr. Mayor.
that was my intent, was to make sure that our verification came from the state and not a phone conversation with the contractor who may or may not fabricate a story saying, yeah, we got it, then panic mode the following day.
Well, everyone probably has to show proof.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Mike, do you need to do this right away?
This project?
Yep.
It is holding up the treatment plant operations, but we can certainly work with whatever council's directions are on this.
Let me be the wild one here. So I will make a motion.
contingent?
No, this motion is gonna really throw everyone. I will approve the award of a contract to TML Construction Incorporated of Hayden, Idaho, in the amount of $1,832,000 with an ad alternate of $7,000, seeing that they are the next most responsive bidder who actually has a license.
So we have a motion, is there a
Mr.
second?
Mayor, could I interject? I got
Yes.
help from a friend who is watching TV, watching live, and his analysis was Petra was told their license was about to expire. Their license was current when the bids were opened, so we don't know that they are out of compliance. So it doesn't add a lot of clarity, but it's a similar situation that they probably had it, but we don't know.
So anyway, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that? Okay, so it doesn't look like there's a second to that.
Then,
May I?
It just, I don't know, is it just me, or are we just complicating the heck out of this whole
yeah.
situation? I mean, it seems like that it's a phone call. If they happen to not have the license, then you bring it back and we make another decision.
But then, so they're out of compliance. They're
Well, we
not
don't-
playing by the rules.
We don't
No,
know.
Mike, we don't,
So,
we
Mr. Mayor,
don't
can I
know.
make a motion?
We don't know that they're out of compliance.
Well, if we don't know they're out of compliance, what did you say? You said you just checked and they don't have a license.
I called the state
Right.
and spoke with them today, and they said this, we were looking at their website, and it shows active, but it hasn't changed, despite the fact that it's past the expiration date. So they said that they just haven't changed their website yet to reflect either their date or their inactive status, and that they're 4 to 5 weeks out. I left them-
Renata, you deal with people who renew licenses. If someone didn't have a beer and wine license current with the city, they wouldn't be able to sell beer and wine, right?
Right, but we would need verification from the state as to whether they're expired or not, and it does sound like the state has not clearly identified whether they're expired or not. But if it helps at all, before we get the mayor to sign any contract or agreement, I wait and get all the payment, performance bonds, insurances, any of the public works contractor licenses that state that they have to pay their taxes to the state of Idaho. So there's often a delay between when you guys approve something and when it's actually ready for signature and enactment. So if there isn't anything in the bid that says these prices are only valid for 30 days, we do have some time before we can actually sign the agreement. And if it's within the next 2 weeks, we can put something new on the agenda at the July 20th meeting.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just make a motion that we award the contract to Petra, Inc. for the new collection building project in the amount of $1,787,900 with the contingency that proof of license renewal is intact prior to signature of the contract.
Second.
Well, but we wouldn't need that contingency, Renata, because you wouldn't approve any contract without that. Right.
I wouldn't give it to you for signature.
Right, so.
And
But
since the
for
license was
comfort
there when
level.
they submitted the bid, they were responsive because it was in the packet. So that's not a non-responsive bid. This is, in my mind, a technical issue that I think we need to just be public and make sure that we're all assured that that is going to be done before the contract is signed.
Okay, so Kiki had a motion and Dan seconded it, so further discussion on that. Woody?
So I seem to remember this last year driving my car without a license for 5-6 months because I couldn't get in to renew it. Isn't that the same thing here? They didn't tell me I couldn't drive. They just said, oh, we're going to give you more time.
But it was a
The system.
requirement within the instruction to bidders
Okay.
that you had to have a public works license in order to be awarded the contract to bid on this project. When the bids were submitted, they did have a public works license. It expired last week. Again, as I said earlier, I can't imagine a contractor this size letting something like that slide. I really can't.
I've
But-
seen really large contracts be thrown out and undone over a sheet of paper. So I've seen it happen, and it's the law, and it's the way the bid was submitted, and so it was in place, was responsive, but I think just assuring that we're following up within a specific time frame, and that we all are aware that there isn't going to be anything signed unless it's as perceived. So we're looking at this as an administrative glitch on the state side for not updating the website. So that's what I'm comfortable with.
And I'd be willing to work with the clerk on this, just, we're just trying to be as thorough as possible, so there is no possible complaint filed later on down the road.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I can't support this. If we have a multi-million-dollar corporation can't get its act together, yeah, that's for $1.7 million, or almost $1.8 million of ratepayer money.
We don't know that they haven't.
It's probably the
It's
state's fault, not
that
their
hasn't,
fault.
You know what?
performed.
I'm not going to play word games with a multi-million-dollar company that should have its shit together. I'm not going to. I mean, we have another bidder. We could have gone with him. Fine, play the games, but I mean, these guys, they should be professionals, and my opinion is they're not.
But I guess just to add that we don't know that they haven't had their application in, and it's just they're delayed 4 or 5 weeks. They could have not done it, Dan, but they could have done everything right, and they're just waiting on the state. How many times has anyone waited
Yeah,
for?
victim of-
Government? But you could be right. You could very well be right.
You know, and I don't want to second guess.
Yeah, so. Any other discussion on this item?
Take a vote.
Roll call, please, Renata.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
No.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. Move on to resolution number 21-041, approving the police department to apply for and accept, if awarded, a community policing development micro grant in the amount of $33,000 to secure a 5-day intensive training on mental health emergency responders assistance program. Chief.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight in front of you to ask for permission to apply for and accept, if awarded, a grant that would provide training to our officers. What this is a group of doctors and counselors who are kind of tip of the spear nationwide in terms of PTSD and other peer support type training for first responders. This group would come into our area for a week, 3 separate sessions for in-service personnel. Our men and women in police department would go through a 1-day class, and then there would be 2 days of extra training specifically for our peer support personnel, which are the individuals that come out and help officers after, say, an officer-involved shooting or witnessing a child death or something of that nature. There would be an additional $5,000 that we've built into the grant for those individuals who may be identified by either the counselors or the doctors through the training who might benefit from some additional local, how do I say this, some sessions with counselors or psychiatrists here locally. The grant is through the Community Development Office, which is a national program. We had initially, well, let me say this, we've had 2 members of our department who've gone through this exact training back in Oklahoma, and they said it was some of the best training that they have gone through in their careers. So I'm in support of this, and what I'm requesting for is council's approval to apply for and accept this grant if it's awarded.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Woody?
Chief, does this include any fire or EMS people? Or is
No, at this
just
point, this is
police?
mostly geared specifically towards police department personnel. As a matter of fact, I think some of the counselors that they bring out are law enforcement or prior law enforcement personnel have gone through similar type situations.
Right,
I think there might be other programs that are geared specifically for fire that the same group offers, but the grant that we're applying for is geared specifically towards
Awesome.
police officers.
Sounds really good.
Dan?
Do you have a target number of people that would go through this training?
It would be all sworn personnel for the Coeur d'Alene Police Department.
Okay, and just our department then?
Yeah, if we have people who are absent, they can't make it because they've got, a vacation scheduled or they get really ill that week or something like that, we might attempt to fill some of those spots with people from, say, the Sheriff's Department or something of that nature.
Okay.
Any other questions for the Chief? If not, we'd be looking for council action.
Mr. May,
Go ahead.
Mr. May, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 21-041, approving the police department to apply for and accept, if awarded, a community policing development microgrant in the amount of $33,000
The second?
to secure, sorry, my voice, I keep losing my voice today, to secure a 5-day intensive training on mental health emergency responders assistant program.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
English,
Yes?
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Kuchen.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to our public hearings tonight. The first hearing is a legislative hearing. This is a Community Development Block Grant Year-End Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. Chelsea's here with her presentation tonight. Welcome.
Good evening. Let's see if I can. Oh, okay. So this is the public hearing on the 2020 CDBG Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. So every year we get our allocation from HUD, and we are required to submit an annual report at the end of the year that highlights our accomplishments for the year. So our plan year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So CDBG supports low to moderate income residents through allowable activities that HUD designates, and we first became eligible to receive funds in 2007. So LMI is just low to moderate income, that's all it means, and HUD designates those households based on our median income, which is, in 2020, our median income for a household of 2 was $70,400. So HUD bases the LMI designation on 80, 50, and 30% of that median income. So how we select our activities each year is they must meet a national objective and be a HUD-approved activity. And so the national objective that we are mostly using is the benefit to low and moderate income people. and then aiding in prevention of slum and blight and meeting urgent need are other national objectives. And our activities have to meet our annual action plan goals and one of our 6 consolidated plan goals. And then when we choose our activities, we have to consider the capacity of our staff, the size of our allocation, and the capacity of the subrecipients to carry out the activity. So here's just a breakdown of our 2020 project funding. Our total grant was $339,375. And Lake City Center's Meals on Wheels grant was $10,000 this year, up from $5,000 in the past. We designated $5,000 to our sidewalk improvement project, so it's just set aside there. It wasn't used in 2020. And then we do $50,000 for our MRAP program for emergency home repairs. And then our community opportunity grants were $206,500. And then our administration costs were $67,875. So in 2020, again, we awarded $206,500 in community opportunity grants. And then we completed 2 grants with 2019 funds, Lake City Center's ADA restroom rehab and St. Vincent de Paul's HVAC system. So those were used 2019 funds, but completed in 2020. And then we completed our sidewalk project at the Fernan Elementary School for our Safe Routes to School using 2016, 17, and 18 funds. And that totaled $58,400. And so in 2020, we met our neighborhood revitalization, sidewalk improvement, and public service goals, and allocated funds for public facilities for sale, affordable housing, and economic development. Those were not completed in 2020, but they were allocated. And then we did not fund our goal for affordable for rent housing. So in 2020, we rehabbed 17 homes through the MRAP program. So that includes our heating systems, roofs, ADA restroom rehabs, electrical and plumbing projects, and sewer lateral projects. So here's just a little before and after. This home actually got 2 projects done. So they got new siding and insulation and the new steps and railing. It was completely rotted out and really dangerous. So she got new steps and she's safe to leave the house now, coming and going. So, and then some of the other projects that were completed were a water abatement project. That one had water and mold in the basement. So we got that fixed and cleaned up, furnace replacements, and we had a lot of re-roofing projects done. So the Lake City Center grant was increased to $10,000 in 2020. It serves over 67 seniors per month, and they expect to double that number with the additional funding. And so it serves seniors 60 and older that are homebound or disabled. So some of the projects that were awarded, not completed in 2020, but they're in progress. Well, Lake City Center was awarded a grant for their AED installation and training. So that was awarded in 2020, but not completed until after the plan year ended. The NIC Economic Development Grant and the Habitat for Humanity for sale of affordable housing grants were also awarded in 2020, but they're not complete yet, so they're in progress. And then we also received the COVID-19 funds through the CARES Act, and those are for urgent needs serving low to moderate income. They follow the same guidelines as our regular funds. And here's the list again of the projects that have been funded. A lot of them are still in progress. We completed the expanded Meals on Wheels program, Boys and Girls Food Pantry, Boys and Girls, the Academic Support Program, and then the other Lake City Center grant for the freezers and some extra food and supplies there. So those are all complete, and the rest are still open and in progress. So we can take public comments on it and ask council to approve the submittal to Caper for, or of the Caper to HUD for official review.
Thank you, Chelsea. Questions council would have for Chelsea on this? All right, thank you. So this is a public hearing, and I will open up the public comment at this time for it. I have a list. I do not have anyone's name on this list wishing to testify. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to give public comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, I will close the public comment portion of this and look for council action.
I would make a motion to approve the Community Development Block Grant 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, the CAPER.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Move on to our second legislative public hearing for tonight. This is proposed fee increases for a number of items, and Renata McLeod is going to review those. So this is resolution number 21-042, approving fees for the building, finance, parks, and recreation and water departments. Renata.
Thank you. Today I'm your messenger. We have several departments that have fee increases, and we always find it easier just to have one person come up and present. I have a few of the department heads left in the room if you have specific questions for them. Otherwise, Troy and I will be here to pinch hit for some of the other departments. As you know, we're required to do a publication in the newspaper for public hearings. We did do so in the appropriate amount of time and posted the proposed fees on our website on June 22nd, and we have received no public comments since that time. The current proposed fees will include some minor increases, some that are maybe just a little over 5%. There's lots of information contained in the packet, talking about clarifications, some wording changes, things like that. So I'm just going to give you some highlights for the fees proposed from Building, Finance, Parks and Recreation, and the Water Department. All other fees on the books stay the same. So the building department had several clarifications. One of the things that was really important to them was to clarify this working without a permit. It's worded in a way that maybe it wasn't really clear, so I want to make it really clear. If someone starts work without a permit, they usually get red tagged and get some sort of penalty. So at this point, they're saying within the Idaho code, it says the penalty should be you pay an additional fee equal to the fee of the permit you would have had to pay originally. I kind of refer to that as a double fee. The thing that they clarified is that even if you go in and do something that's illegal, you have to pay that fee, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to be issued a permit. So if it's so egregious that it's against all codes, it doesn't require us to issue you a permit. So hopefully that helps a little bit. They're seeing a few more manufactured homes, and so they wanted to clarify what that setting permit fee is. Mechanical fees, they're seeing a lot more mini splits. It was included in the list, but it was referred to in another way. So they're just clarifying mini splits are $8 per unit. It's not a new fee, it's just clarifying that's what they intended by the verbiage that was there previously. Plan review fees, again, they're getting a lot more amendments and additional plans coming in. So they submit the original one and then they go, oops, we need to change this, or we've changed our plan, we want to add this floor plan. So they're clarifying what the fee is for that, at minimum $35. Re-roof and re-siding permit fees, they want to clarify it's going to be based on the valuation and have a processing fee rather than a review fee. So they changed the wording around on that as well. Tried to make it a little more easily to understand. The finance department is requesting a fee of 5% increase to the street lighting fees. For this year equals a 14-cent increase, and then for next year, rather than bringing it back every year, they wanted to go ahead and do it in 2-year increments. That 5% would be a 15-cent increase based on this year's increase. So effective immediately, they would like the $2.99, and then effective April 1 of 2022, $3.14 a month. Parks and Recreation, They have created some additional categories related to burials, and they've risen most of the fees that are proposed here at a 5% increment to cover additional staff time needed for the services. And then they've created a whole new category for some events in these fields. And I'll just quickly show you what those changes are.
Is burials, is that under parks or recreation?
I would hope it's the Parks
all right.
Department. But some people do enjoy going to the cemetery and reading some of the gravestones. Some of them are interesting. So for these parks fees related to cemetery lots, they wanted to clarify on these fees here, these are a 5% increase. So they did change the opening and closing on holidays. And then they had a secondary headstone fee. They had some additional wording in there that they removed. Then for Parks and Recreation, they increased the soccer and swim lessons, city residents and non-city residents. And just to clarify, we're not talking, we're shipping people in from other states. We have lots of other cities around here that don't have these programs, so you'd see folks from Post Falls, Hayden, and the like. Okay, these are the new fees that they're proposing for these event fees for Ramsey, Memorial, Sunset, and Coeur d'Alene Soccer Complex. I think these are competitive in the industry, and Mr. Greenwood is still here if you have specific questions on those for him. The Water Department hasn't adjusted some of their hookup fees since 2018. Since that time, we all know material costs have increased, obviously staffing costs increase, and they are requesting an increase in what they refer to as the MXU fee. And I have no idea what that acronym stands for, but Mr. Pickle's here if you're really that curious. But it relates to their radio read program for their meters. So they did add in a little clarification of a minimum usage fee for bulk user fees. Apparently, there's some staffing time involved, even if there's no use, so they're covering some of their costs with that. And they have increased the 1 and 2 inch meter hookups with the asphalt cuts, slightly over 5%. And then the radio read equipment will be $171 for all services, whether the city installs it or not. So the action tonight is again required by Idaho Code. Anytime we increase fees by 5% or more, we have to have a public hearing. So we're here to accept testimony and then seek council action on Resolution 21042. I stand for questions.
Council questions for Renata? Kiki.
Go ahead.
Renata, on the parks fees under recreation,
Yes.
the event charge fees, are those new fees or increased fees?
Yes. They did have the field lighting fee for Sunset and Memorial. And so they just removed Sunset and Memorial, made it that field lighting fee of $40. So the $40 was already there. The new part is the activity charge of an hourly rate of up to 4 hours for small groups. And then all of those event fees are all new.
So is there some background on, they seem like it's industry standard, but for those people who use the Ramsey Sports Complex and stuff like that, are they aware that this is going to be a fee now? And thank you, Bill, for moving to the podium.
That's a very good question.
So what we had before was kind of an à la carte, and we found that we weren't really keeping pace with some sports complexes. And so we were really undercharging significantly. And so we kind of tuned it up. We're getting lots of neighbors coming here wanting tournaments. As you can see, as Renata mentioned, for the small users, that's still really a good fee, affordable fee. But for the sports complex is what we were looking at, trying to capture, because folks like Merkel charge a lot more than this, but of course our field isn't Merkel, but nonetheless, it's a tournament charge. And so it's not really geared for the smaller groups. And the tournament directors are willing to pay this amount without hesitation.
So this is just really for events. This doesn't affect like leagues and the.
Well, if it's a tournament now, so a league, not necessarily, but tournaments. So what happens is a tournament director will come to us and say, we want to have some sort of tournament on softball, and it's going to be this way. And they would be, in the past, it almost came up to this amount, but it was an à la carte where they pick and choose if they want us to help us line the fields or not. We did it, made it all encompassing, so it's just, instead of à la carte, it's a package deal.
Okay. And do you have projections on, is this going to be an increase into your revenue stream, or is this going to be a break even and it's just trading out for your à la carte program?
We will do better financially. And it's kind of hard to tell right now, only because of COVID last year. And then this year, we're not really taking on lots of big stuff because we just don't have staff.
Right.
So at some point here, we'll see some good numbers being generated.
Okay, thank you.
Woody?
When we talk about permits and building, and I meant to talk to the building fellow and never got there. So permits are, they inspect, if you get a permit, you get inspected, or they say it's okay for you to do this?
So the permit, it depends on what you're doing, right? So if you're doing a re-roof, you come in, you tell them what kind of materials you're gonna be using, and then they would inspect it. If you're doing a construction project where you're building a whole new building, they're gonna have to review your plans, they redline what doesn't meet code, kick it back to you, you fix it, they review it again, and then you get a permit to build, and then there's several inspections at different points of that construction throughout the life of the project.
So the one that caught me, I guess, was the re-roof going.
Yes.
It's based on what you spend on it. So if you do it yourself, it's cheaper than having somebody else do it? Do you follow that line of thinking?
Right, and I think he tried, the re-roof items used to be based on whether it was an asphalt shingle, a cedar shingle, metal rib, or roll flat. I mean, they had all these little categories, and it was a price per square foot. So now they're saying it's gonna be based on the same table as the building permit, which is based on valuation. So you come in and you say, here's the value of the project, and that's what your permit fee is based on.
So if you got a permit on a roof when things were cheaper, it's cheaper than if you had to re-roof now when things are more expensive. I don't follow
Right,
that line
and if
of
you
thinking.
had a tiny mobile home that was a much smaller project, its value is gonna be less than if you're re-roofing a hotel. So that's where the fairness factor comes in. The larger your project, the more you're paying, the smaller your project, the less you're paying.
So it's based on square feet.
It's called the
cost.
valuation chart, and Troy, I don't know if there's a better way to explain it than that.
Okay,
I don't know how else to go down that road without Ted here, sorry.
sorry. Okay.
Any other questions for Renata? All right, thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. I will open up the public testimony portion of this. I have a sign-up sheet, do not have anyone's name on this sign-up sheet to give public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give public testimony on this? Not seeing anyone, I will close the public testimony portion and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve Resolution 21042, approving fees for building, finance, parks, and rec, and the water department.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion?
Just one question for clarification. And Renata, this one was on the streetlight increase, where they put the next year's streetlight increase in there, and if that's 5% or more, wouldn't it be subject to a public hearing next year, or can you do that in advance?
You can do it in advance, and really Bonnie's trying to make it marry up with the increases in the water utility you previously approved for a 5-year period.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Just that it's very important, I mean, as we had our budget workshop the other day, and it's always important to remember that I think user fees are very appropriate, and anything that we can charge by fees for what people are doing is a good thing. And otherwise, we are subsidizing with property tax. So, yeah, we're going to have some increases, but it's very targeted and I think fair and appropriate.
All right. So Renata, do you have a title to read?
No, I'm sorry, that was a misstep on the agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any last opportunity for discussion? Not seeing any. Roll call, please.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Kukin,
Oh, yeah.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No one would oppose that. We are adjourned.
I might want to.